Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hi everyone, welcome back to NPTEL online certification course on research methodology for planning and architectural studies. Today at lecture number 16, we will discuss about types of data in research. So, whether you adopted a research method like a qualitative research or quantitative research or maybe fundamental research or empirical research, so you will require some of the information which is called the research data. So, for that we discuss about the type that we normally use in our planning and architectural studies. So, in this case our objective is to learn the meaning of data, types of data used in research, different classification of data depending on different broad aspect, whether like it is about the quality of data, whether it is the measurement and scaling of the data. We will discuss all those things in this particular lecture in next few slides, and then we will summarize the entire learning out of this. So, what is data? Data means observations or evidences, right. Data are always collected with a sense of purpose. So, definitely first we have to be clear for my research what kind of information are required. So, that will be the data for my own research. If I want to have certain sort of model which will make the dynamics of the population growth and all, so then population data is something which is required, the information regarding population, or if anything required for my model to develop, like maybe the birth rate, death rate, maybe the migration, maybe the other impact which may decide about the population growth of any locality. So, if I want to develop a system dynamic model out of that, so we need certain information. Now, the information sources might be different, but overall these are the informations that I require. So, if you recall, in our research process we have discussed it in detail. We have to list down the information type that are required and then the possible sources where from we can get it. If we get it from some secondary sources, it's good enough. If we don't get it from secondary sources, in such cases what we need to do, we need to go for primary data collection. So, for that kind of primary data collection and secondary data collection we will discuss again time to time to bring the clarity in the understanding. So, once we know the purpose of my research and the type of data that I require for my research, I will find the source. In this case, researchers require the data by means of some standardized research tools or self-designed instrument. So, that means the data may be something which is available in some form, but my research demands that it should be in certain format. So, if it is readily available with certain format, I can directly use it, but if we want it to be like designed, like in this case, like we just need to code the raw data and then take as input for such kind of research tools. So, that also we need to look into. Data can be interpreted easily and most objectively. So, this is something the objectivity of the information or the research depends on the type of data that you have. So, if you have data like 2011 the population was like for a particular study area, the population was 1,25,000 and now after 10 years it is like 1,35,000. So you can clearly understand that okay, within this particular gap of 10 years, or maybe the duration, the gap you determine, that there is a overall growth of this population. So it is very clearly identifiable that okay, there is certain increase in the total population. But if you want to have more interpretation out of this, so then also you need to look that what type of segmented data you require. Suppose you have assumptions that okay, there is an increase, but that increase is not really of the same rate, or maybe the increase is there but this is just because of certain kind of inflow in that region. It is not from the city itself, but there is some kind of merger of two study area or the municipal boundary. So all such information once you have, it will be a clear evidence for the researcher to follow. Even when you use these and publish something, for the readers also it will be easy to follow. Data can be easily subjected to objective statistical treatment. So in this particular case, many a times the data you collect in a subjective manner, something like in a qualitative tool like perception, which is in that way not a quantifiable thing, like say comfort situation. So comfort situation is not, if you want to like record the perception of like towards comfort of say public transport user in a bus. So in such cases we have two options, either like if we want to measure the thermal comfort or something, so we can use certain sensors and then we can measure those in a quantitative manner. But if we want to do it in a subjective way, that where we ask that are you feeling comfortable, and you give a particular range that I'm very much comfortable or I'm not at all comfortable, it is leading to the discomfort level, and then we can code them and we can then make this as a objective one, like we can derive certain sort of ranking, certain kind of weightages out of that kind of qualitative information too. Now coming to the type of data based on different characteristics. So in this case we have brought two characteristics, one is the qualitative data and the second one is the quantitative data. So what is qualitative data? Qualitative data consists of non-numerical information. So normally this is useful for a qualitative research, no doubt, that I think you all understand, that provides insight into the quality, characteristics and then meaning associated with the phenomena. It involves subjective observations, narratives and open ended responses. What is subjective observations? That okay, it seems that the bus is congested, looking at this, this is very congested, looking suffocating, or it seems like very suffocating, without having any numerical evidence that the suffocation, how you measured that, okay, is there any drop in the oxygen saturation level or something, it's just feeling suffocating. Or it may be narratives. Suppose in some kind of ethnographic study that we discussed initially, we'll discuss more with the examples in our upcoming lectures as well, that to demonstrate a particular activity that you make a narration. So this is something again very objective type, and then is a narrative type. So that information is also helpful in some of the cases where you show that how people that they react to a cultural value or something. And open ended responses, sometimes research demands that particular case. Say if I am conducting a study to understand the perception of citizen, the other day also I explained with similar example, like about the awareness towards the cleanliness, okay, or the hygiene, okay, which is required, especially post COVID. This is something like we're much more aware of those facts and we act like this. So maybe wearing a mask in a congested situation, or maybe doing the sanitation using hand sanitizer or the soaps, or maybe make the area clean. So in such cases, if I want to ask just without any questions, without any rating, without any quantifying information, we just simply take the interview of people, that how they feel about it, how they react about it. So they are almost open ended, so you may expect any answer, so that is not confined by us or the researcher. So then that there will be some kind of qualitative data, right? And but with that also that information you can make certain kind of analysis with the qualitative data. You can apply certain sort of text mining to figure it out that okay, most commonly people are talking about certain aspect, whether it is the cleanliness of the road, or maybe you can say that they are talking about the open and defecation free, the ODF, etc. Now for example of qualitative data, interview transcript. So in this case, the time you take the interview maybe in a audio manner, so you can convert it to like a transcript. Say for example, now for any YouTube video that you see, there is option called closed caption, okay, some CC. So if you click, so you'll go and see the subtitles. So if you can compile all of them, so you'll get a transcript, so through which you can also identify that which are the aspect are repetitive and the respondent is actually trying to emphasize on this. So that is always be there. It can be design narratives, it can be observational note, thematic analysis, you can have different way, and then you can also have the qualitative feedback from the stakeholders. In contrast to that, the quantitative data, it is the numerical information that can be measured and explained using numbers, right? The temperature. So qualitative way I can say that today is very hot or today is very cold. This is a qualitative judgment. But if I say today temperature is 48 degrees Celsius, so nobody should get a feeling whether it is cold or hot. It's obviously a very hot situation. Or maybe if I say the temperature is, my place is now minus 10 degrees. So the moment this minus 10 degrees is reported, you always have that particular clear cut understanding that okay, this is a cold situation. It involves quantities and objective measurement, unlike the subjective one for the qualitative information, and make it suitable for statistical analysis straight away. For qualitative, definitely there are other algorithm that you need to apply to codify, or maybe you have to read it. So there are different techniques, but for quantitative data there are many techniques available as well. Say for example the building height. So in this case, qualitative way we can say that the building is 4-story building, unless otherwise you know the floor to floor height, probably 4-story can end up with many things. If it is an institutional building, maybe the height will be different. If it is residential, it is different. If it is an old building, normally in those cases the height was quite higher. So now for this, if you say that building height is say 30 meter, so we have clear idea about this. Or the energy consumption, that how much energy that is consumed. It may be the power consumption, that okay, normally how many watt that each day we are using the electricity. Construction cost, the amount, occupancy rate, that is also a number, daylighting levels, okay, different lux and other thing, and also different thermal performance. Now these are all information related to the architecture building, but if you want to get certain information for planning exercise, suppose if you get certain kind of vegetation index, if you want to get the temperature difference, or maybe the population information, so or the area, so those kind of things are quantitative in nature, and then you can use it to interpret, or you can create another set of numerical information. Say if you know the population and you know the area of that location, you can find out those kind of density, the net density, gross density, etc., etc. Now depending on the source of data, so this is another way of looking at the data. In this particular case, you have primary data and secondary data. So what exactly it is? Primary data is basically the first hand information collected directly by the researcher from original sources for a specific research purpose. It is unique to the research project, not previously gathered from other study. Common method for primary data collection includes survey, interviews, experiment, observations. So, the primary data collection can be of qualitative or can be of quantitative in nature. Only thing is that primary data collection, that this is for the first time I am getting this information, nobody else in the past have collected for some other purpose and I am using it. My research may require it, say population information, normally we refer to census document for any particular study area. So, that is not a primary data, that is secondary data, because the data was collected by the ministry because of looking the socio-demographic and other records. But for me, probably I am looking at this to understand the carrying capacity of a region, where we understand the how much population and how much resources that are available in the study area, and then we just calculate. So, for me the purpose is different, but requirement is population data, but that is not being collected. But if something that okay, the data is too old, I want to make a validation of that, and I go and do the survey, household survey for my own research. It's still the household survey like census, but that will be a sample survey, because effectively practically for a study area we cannot have 100% household survey within a stipulated time and the budget constant. Okay. And if the data is already available, which is having the authenticity and also the relevance, there is no need to go for a fresh data collection, right. So, in this particular case, it is very unique to your project and not previously gathered for some other study. Surveys we can do, interview also can take whenever you go for a focus group discussion or any personal interview, the expert interview. So, that is something of a qualitative in nature, but that is also like the primary data. Primary data is valuable for generating new insight. So, this statement is important. If your study depends on primary data collection and the validation of that, so definitely that is very much required to get the data which will generate the new insight which has not been done previously. So, that is something very important. So, depending on your research type, you have to decide. Say if you go for some kind of planning projects in general, that will require this kind of survey and other thing. But suppose you want to test it through simulation or through, you want to do something in architectural field, that where you want to understand the efficiency of a building material, okay, maybe a paneling or maybe a door, maybe something, that the thermal performance of that or maybe the conductivity of that. So, in such cases it is much more on the experimental setup rather than doing a survey. So, it is not that each research will require an extensive survey, go for a field data collection. It may be a lab experiment as well, where you test the fire resistance of a building. Okay. So, this kind of research is also going on. So, for that it is something that you set up the experiment and gather information, that is your primary data collection, and then maybe you can refer those kind of values with the established one that you compare, say typical reinforcement, and then you just think of a low cost bamboo reinforcement, you can compare them. The example includes the on-site measurement, user interviews and surveys, along with that also the lab experiment. Okay, that can also add the value. Now, in contrast to that, the secondary information, that you have not collected the information, somebody already have collected, and the data is available for any researcher to use. The data already being collected by someone else for a different purpose other than the current study. The data may come from various sources such as government website, government publication, academic journals, industry reports, or any other existing data set, or it may be something your co-researcher they have also collected as their part of the study. Researchers analyze and interpret this set of data to extract the insight relevant to their question, because as I already mentioned that for a census information, it is collecting very detailed information, the name of the family members, their age, whether they are married, their education level, their language, mother tongue, their caste, etc. But if your work is only focusing on certain aspects, suppose you only want to do something on the gender sensitivity to something, so then probably for you it is important to know the gender distribution among the whole population. You don't require something like about their mother tongue or something. So you have to extract the information which is required for your study, so that you need to understand. For primary data you collect only those information which are required, but for secondary you have to extract the information which are required. That is the fundamental difference. In this case also, researcher must critically evaluate the quality of the data available, the reliability of the data, and the relevance of the secondary data. Because many a times what happen that okay, the data is not current data. Say for example, now again the census information, unfortunately because of the COVID and also still we do not have the recent census data. So still the work that we are doing, we rely on the 2011 data, and we are doing some kind of forecasting depending on some other sources as well. This is one. Or else for a particular report the data is available, but you do not have trust on the publishers, that it seems like it is something like very biased. So in such cases, even if the information are available, you cannot use it, and whenever there is a doubt you can still do a pilot or primary study a bit to validate it. If you find that okay, it is as per the data which is available, you can still rely on it, or else you, even if the information are available, you cannot use it. Now based on continuity of the data, okay, we can also have two category: discrete data and continuous data. So discrete means where it is talking about a discrete number, and continuous it is something in a statistical way, it is having some kind of continuity. Now whenever you say discrete data, it consists of countable and distinct value, often expressed as whole number. Say for example, in this case what you can see, so it is cycle. So how many cycles are here? 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 cycles. So this is something we can say that this information is discrete. This type of data represent individual items or occurrences and lacks intermediary values between observations. So in such cases my value is either 1 or maybe 2 or 3. I cannot have some value called 1.5. So 1.5 cycles is not possible, right? 1.5 population is also not possible, though when you forecast the information population data, in result may come into something like in fraction, but we normally round it off to a whole digit. So population data is also not fractional, or maybe it is also discrete. It is categorical and finite, with each data point falling into a specific category. Examples: number of floors in a building, or quantity of housing units in a neighborhood, or the total number of trees in a park. So in all these cases they are countable, and this is very specific. So even in this case the floors you have specific 3, 4. Whenever you say that total housing unit, you have a whole number, or maybe the trees. So it is something that the way I have given the example of the cycle, it is like that. So there is no such kind of action. In contrast to that, when you talk about the continuous data, this particular type, it involves the measurable values that can take any real number within a given range. It is characterized by infinite number of possible values, and also it can further subdivided into smaller intervals, allowing for a more precise representation of any attribute to be measured. So it is something like if you have a particular scale, that you have this inches scale, right, or you can have centimeter scale. So in such cases, if you have only measurement of say 1 centimeter, or maybe you can say that 2 centimeter, but there might be a possibility that it can be 1.1 centimeter. because we have further unit like in millimeters. So, you can divide into the interval. Say for example, whenever you have such kind of change in the value, like okay, so maybe this is some sort of value, you can say this kind of graph for your electrocardiogram, or maybe you can have that particular ECG plot where you have those kind of beat, or maybe this is something like the way that that particular sensex will go up and down. So, this is also having some sort of continuity. It is suitable for analyzing the gradual variation and trend. So, for example, this particular case that earlier we have seen the number of floors which cannot be like fragmented, it is 3, 4 or 5. But now at the same time, if we want to demonstrate in terms of height of the building, so it may be like for 3 floors it can be like you can have 9 meter, or maybe if there is a deviation in between, so you can also have it say 10.5. So, where maybe you have little extra in some of the floors, or else temperature where you have that kind of intervals, or weight of concrete, or maybe it can also have that kind of fractions. Now, coming to this particular classification, which is also very important for us, and then very much pertinent to this discussion, and many a times we use it without understanding the exact meaning. So, 4 categories depending on the measurement scale: nominal data, ordinal data, interval data and ratio data. So, let us understand one by one. So, what is nominal data? Nominal data represent categories or labels without any inherent order. It will not say any order. Say for example, here male, female. So, in this case it is nothing showing to any order, it is not having the value. So, it is simple, you have male, female, or maybe it is a color of eyes or color of hair. So, it is like brown, it is black, it is blue, or maybe any color. Say for example, like if we also want to know about the blood group, so we can have A, we can have B, we can have AB and we can have O. There is no such kind of order in their presentation, that A is first, B is second, it is not like that. Or it cannot be that we can make some average, that there is something in between A and AB. So, that we also not do. It simply implies a classification of an item into 2 or more categories without any extent of magnitude, that already I have explained. There is no particular order assigned to them, that I already have told about the male female. It is used for qualitative distinction, because we are not taking and defining in the number, then the quantitative measures. Example, the building types, architectural style, city district. So, say for example, building type, if I say office building, educational building, so these are different building types. So, we can take this as a nominal data. Or architectural style, whether it is like you can have in the history we have seen all those kind of cases, the Byzantine architecture, Gothic style, or it may be the Renaissance or it postmodernism. So, these are again some information which is not having such kind of interval or maybe no order in between their first rank or second rank, or maybe it is something the name of the district, or it may be something that you can say that already in that you have the male female as example. Coming to ordinal data. So, ordinal data is representing some order. So, ordinal data involves categories with a meaningful order, but the difference between the category are not consistently measurable. So, this is something we need to understand, and here we are making the mistakes in most of the time. That means, say for example, I want to have a measurement of building ratings. So, there are certain kind of energy rating, building ratings, and then we are giving star. So, 5 star, 4 star, 3 star and like that. So, they are showing the order. If it is 5 star, so it is very good. If it is 1 star, it is not that good. So, it is showing the order. If the number is high, it is better, or number is low, it is lower, or depending on the researchers design, that what 1 represent and what 5 represents in that case. But here the difference between first star and 2 star, second star, or maybe fourth star and fifth star is not exactly consistent. So we cannot do those kind of calculation. So for ordinal data we cannot calculate the mean in such that way. Suppose if I, for a particular value, I am giving say 5 and somebody is giving 4, you should not essentially take, if it is a ordinal type data, you should not take a value like 5 plus 4 by 2, 4.5. So that is not good. It is more precise scale than the nominal scale, because nominal scale is just to qualitatively identify the differences. It does not require relationship of equivalence, but also requires one observation to be greater than or lesser than other. So that means this is something where it talks that it may be something which is not measurable, the interval, but the order is very clearly identifiable and they are distinctly different. Say if in this particular happiness meter, you can say we have scale from 0 to 10. So where not very happy, not happy, moderately happy, happy, very happy. So there is some kind of 0 to 2, 4, 6, 8 and 10. So in this case the difference between happy and moderately happy is not equal to not very happy to not happy, but it is definitely the happy thing is higher than some of the level than your not very happy. So it should not be like they are not clearly identifiable. So here also if you see that this particular emoji, so if it is 5 and if it is 1, so obviously 1 is some scale and 5 is obviously having some kind of better scale, or maybe it can say that representing some better thing or maybe the worst thing depending on the research design. Coming to the interval data, this particular scale has all the characteristics and relationship with ordinal scale. Beside that, the distance between any two numbers is also known and possible. So in this case we are not asking about the order, we simply say that you give a rating, okay, 1 to 5, and we are not saying, we are not defining what is 1, what is 2, what is 3, what is 4, what is 5. 1 is something which is less, 5 is something more. So in such cases any value between 1 to 5 is possible, right. So this is something you can do. The 0 point and the unit of measurement used on this scale are arbitrarily assumed, so it lacks the true 0 point. So this is something, a drawbacks of interval data. We cannot have exact true 0 value, but there is some kind of interval which can be measured. Say for example in this case the temperature. So temperature ups and down or the precipitation of any particular thing which is having some value. So you can have certain kind of average rainfall or average temperature exactly on that. Difference between values are meaningful, but ratio are not. So we are not going for any ratio thing. Now in that contrast, ratio, how it is useful, in addition to the property of interval data which is having some kind of meaningful information, and the interval, the value between two point can be measured. So ratio data additionally has true 0 point, where 0 indicates the absence of the attribute being measured. The ratio data have qualities of real numbers and can be added, subtracted, multiplied or divided. So this is the advantage of using the ratio data, where you can do all this operation. The ratio between values are meaningful, allowing for more precise and quantitative analysis. Example, the building heights, area that you can add, you can divide, population figures also you can project. So in such cases, like you can say that you can make a ratio, whatever the height difference, you have all those things in this particular ratio data. So depending on the purpose of our own need, we can use it effectively. So let us summarize at this particular point that data is an integral part of our research, and depending on the need, either we have to go for primary data collection or else we have to rely on the secondary information and extract the relevant information which will be useful for my research. Then type of data depending on the nature, like whether it is like qualitative, quantitative, whether it is discrete and continuous, and then the measurement scale that we discussed, the nominal, ordinal, ratio. So, all such kind of information or interval data. So, we have to understand their purpose, and based on that we have to use it effectively, because the ratio data we have seen that we can do those kind of addition and multiplication and division. Probably that is not possible for in such cases of the male female, which is nominal data or maybe the ordinal data. So, that we have discussed in detail. Hope this will give you some insights, and with examples of all this type and all. So, in our upcoming lectures when we will discuss the case studies, things will be much more clear to you. With that we end here this lecture. So, next lecture will be on measurement and scaling technique part 1. So, this will discuss in detail in 2 parts, that okay, what are the different measurement and different scaling technique. There we discuss that depending on the data type, how the scaling technique will change. Many of you have heard about say Likert scale. So, what is Likert scale? Maybe there is some kind of other measurement as well. So, where you can use those kind of scaling and measurement techniques. So, with that I will come back again with this discussion of measurement and scaling technique part 1 and part 2 in our subsequent 2 lectures. And till then I wish that you go through all the component, all the lectures so far we discussed, and if you have any doubt, write us in the forum. We will get back to you to bring clarity into all those. So, we will try to answer to the best possible way your query, and thank you for joining the course once again. Bye bye.